When you think of Queen Elizabeth, you probably picture crowns, state banquets, royal carriages, and long tables filled with silver. But behind the palace doors, the Queen's food was often far simpler than people imagine. She had access to the rarest ingredients in the world, the best chefs, the most formal dining rooms in Britain. But many of her favorite dishes were small, traditional, and surprisingly ordinary. So what did Queen Elizabeth actually love to eat? Stay with this story, because by the end, you will see that the Queen's favorite dishes were not just meals. They were clues about her childhood, her discipline, her love of tradition, and the very British habits that followed her for a lifetime. Most people imagine royal dining as pure luxury. Gold plates, 5-course meals, French sauces, formal dinners where every fork has a purpose. And yes, for state banquets, that world was real. But Queen Elizabeth's private meals were often very different. Former royal chef Darren McGrady described her as disciplined with food. She was not someone who lived for rich meals or dramatic dishes. She could have almost anything, but often she chose something plain, a clean piece of fish, some vegetables, a small portion, a cup of tea. That already tells you something important. Queen Elizabeth was not chasing food for attention. She liked routine, she liked order, she liked things done properly. And that is where her favorite dishes start to make sense. One of the most famous foods linked to Queen Elizabeth is the jam penny. It sounds too simple for a queen. Bread, butter, jam, cut into a small circle, roughly the size of an old penny. That is it. No luxury ingredient, no secret palace technique, no dramatic recipe. Just a tiny jam sandwich. But this is why it works. Jam pennies were connected to her childhood and nursery tea. They were the kind of food that belonged to a much earlier Britain. Small, neat, familiar, the sort of thing a child could eat without ceremony. And for Queen Elizabeth, ceremony was already everywhere. Her life had enough protocol, enough rules, enough public attention. A jam penny was different. It was not about being queen. It was about memory. A small sandwich from before the crown became her whole life. That makes this dish more interesting than any banquet, because anyone can understand it. Most people have one food like that, something simple from childhood, something ordinary, something that would look unimpressive to anyone else, but means something to you. For Queen Elizabeth, jam pennies carried that feeling. But her most famous favorite was not a sandwich. Queen Elizabeth was strongly linked to chocolate biscuit cake, not a tall sponge cake, not a French dessert, not something covered in gold leaf. A dense, dark, no-bake cake made with chocolate and broken biscuits. It was simple, but it had power. Former royal chef Darren McGrady has said this cake was special because it kept going back to the Queen's table until it was finished. Other cakes might be served once, a slice taken, the rest sent away. But chocolate biscuit cake was different. It came back, again and again, until the last piece was gone. That tells you more than a long royal menu ever could. The Queen liked small portions. She liked discipline. But when she truly loved something, she did not waste it. She returned to it, quietly, precisely. The same way she returned to many things in life, the same duties, the same habits, the same rituals. And the cake itself fits her perfectly. It is British. It is practical. It is not flashy. It is rich without being ridiculous. When Queen Elizabeth was eating privately, one of the meals most often linked to her was grilled or poached fish with vegetables or salad. Plain, light, controlled. No heavy sauce. No huge portion. No plate trying to impress anyone. Just fish, vegetables, and balance. That might sound boring at first, but it is actually one of the clearest details about her. Because this was a woman who could have eaten the richest food in the world every day. She had chefs, palaces, menus. But when she was alone, she often went back to the sensible plate, the food of someone who understood routine, the food of someone who had spent her life being watched, scheduled, dressed, briefed, and expected to appear steady. Even her meals seemed to follow that same rule. Keep it simple, keep it proper, keep going. One specific royal fish dish often linked to the palace kitchen is poached fish served with new potatoes and spinach. Queen Elizabeth was said to enjoy hark in this style. Again, it is not a dramatic dish. White fish, potatoes, spinach, a traditional palace recipe. But this kind of meal has a very British feeling. It is formal enough for the palace, simple enough to understand, old enough to feel inherited. That is important. Queen Elizabeth's food was not usually about new trends, it was about continuity. A dish could stay on the royal menu for decades. A recipe could pass through generations. A simple fish plate could carry more history than something more expensive. That is what made her food world different from modern celebrity food. It was not built for cameras, it was built for repetition. Her breakfast habits followed the same pattern. Simple, predictable, low fuss. Royal food stories often mention cereal, toast, marmalade, tea, and sometimes eggs as part of the Queen's morning routine. Nothing about that sounds shocking. That is why it is useful. Because it cuts through the fantasy. A queen can still start the day with cereal. A queen can still have toast. A queen can still return to the same morning habits most people would recognize. That is a strange thing about her food. The setting was extraordinary. The habit was often ordinary. The table might be inside a palace, but the breakfast could still feel like Britain. Tea, toast, marmalade. A quiet start before the formal day began. And when you compare that to her chocolate cake or jam pennies, the same character keeps appearing. She liked things that lasted. She liked things that repeated. She liked things that did not need to change just because the world did. Queen Elizabeth could have eaten anything, the rarest meats, the richest desserts, the most complicated dishes, but the foods most closely linked to her were often simple British comforts. Jam pennies, chocolate biscuit cake, grilled or poached fish, toast, tea, and marmalade. None of these dishes screams for attention, and maybe that is the point. Her food was not loud, her habits were not careless. Her taste was not about chasing the newest thing. It was about routine, memory, and tradition. Just a small plate, served properly, in a life where almost nothing else was simple. If this story gave you a different look at Queen Elizabeth, hit the like button, subscribe for more British nostalgia and royal history. Share this video with someone who remembers the Queen, and comment below, which of Queen Elizabeth's favorite dishes surprised you most?